Hello, everyone. This is Mircala with the Clerk and Recorder's Office. We'll give attendees another minute or two to get on before we get started. All right, Molly, are you on? Do you want to go ahead? Well, let's go ahead and get started. It looks like you're unmuted. And if you want to just go ahead and start by introducing yourself and giving a little bit of an overview of the presentation.
Yes, thanks, Mircala. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Molly Fitzpatrick, and I am the Boulder County Clerk and Recorder. So I know that Election Day is Tuesday, and everyone is really looking at Tuesday as the end date. But for us, Tuesday is a milestone in the elections process, because one milestone of the elections process, because we have many more days and a couple of weeks of processing and preparing for election certification. So as we get closer to election night, we wanted to really help you all manage expectations for your own staff, volunteers, supporters, in terms of what ballot processing activities will look like. So we'll go through some of those milestones once we get to election night in the next couple of days. So we'll go ahead and kick it off. Okay, so we'll go through ballot processing activities, election night reporting, the 8th and the 9th day after the election, what ballots might be counted on 9th day, different recount scenarios, the risk limiting audit, and information for watchers. Okay, so in Colorado, we are fortunate because mail ballot processing can start 15 days before an election, but it is important to note that results are not generated into reports until late on election day. Once we start receiving ballots into our office, the ballot envelopes are sorted into different categories from the very beginning. The two major categories of ballots are accepted ballot envelopes, and those are ballots whose signature has been verified and accepted by election judges, and those ballot envelopes are moved to our second floor processing center for ballot extraction from its envelope and processing. There are also a category of ballots that are rejected. There are two categories within rejected ballots. One category of rejected ballots are ballots that voters can take some sort of action to have their vote count. There are another type of rejected ballots that voters cannot cure, and those ballots will not count. So we'll go through those two processes or categories next. So accepted ballot envelopes are ballot envelopes where our election judges are able to make a signature match using previous signatures that we have on file for that record. So what those election judges are doing is looking at the way the voter signed their mail ballot envelope and comparing it to previous records that we have on signature on file for that voter. These judges are trained using Secretary of State guidelines, and we also provide additional training for these judges to further solidify and cement their understanding of signature review. Accepted ballot envelopes also include scenarios where there is only one voted ballot in the envelope, and the ballot is for this election. We have previously, voters have returned ballots that don't actually correlate to this election. We do not move those ballots forward. Once the signature is accepted and the ballot is accepted, the voter is assigned vote credit in the Secretary of State's database, and that is what triggers those ballot track notifications, letting folks know that their ballot has been accepted. Once the ballot has been accepted, the envelope is securely transported to our second floor ballot processing center for opening and separation and the following steps, including scanning and tabulation. So that's at a high level some of our ballot processing basics for accepted ballot envelopes. And we do have a tour on our tour schedules on our website if you would like to come see this in person. Going back to rejected ballot envelopes. So again, there are two categories of rejected ballots. The first is the ballots that voters have the opportunity to cure or rectify in order to have their vote count. So back to the beginning of the presentation, you heard me mention 8th day. So if a voter is in a temporary rejected status, it means that they have until 8 days after the election to return information to us to let them know that that was their signature, or to provide information if they didn't include it and they were required to do so. So this includes missing ID. Some voters in Colorado, most of the time voters who are voting by mail for the first time in an election, are required to provide a photocopy of their ID and with their ballot. If they do not do this and they were required to do so, their ballot envelope is held on our first floor, not moved upstairs for processing. But if the voter does take action to cure that ballot and provide that ID or cure that signature discrepancy, then we will accept the ballot and move it forward for processing. And again, voters have until 8 days after the election in order to cure their ballot. And again, there are some ballots that voters do not have the opportunity to cure. And so these are ballots that or ballot envelopes that include more than one voted ballot on the envelope, an empty envelope, or a ballot for a wrong election or a previous election. Election night reporting. So this is something that I know all of you are very interested in knowing. This is probably why you're here. So in terms of logistics for election night reporting, on election night or election day, pretty late on election day and right before election results start getting posted to our website, we will add a link to the top of our website, bouldercountyvotes.org. It will be very obvious. It will say election night results. You will note that it will say unofficial, and this is because our election is not certified until the end of November, and that occurs with a bipartisan canvass board. But we will begin posting results at 7 p.m. and that first posting is going to reflect everything counted through Monday. After that, the ballots will, the uploads will include ballots that are counted on Tuesday and in-person ballots as well. We do expect to be processing for several days. As you all know, we have a very long ballot in Colorado and in Boulder County. It is a 2-card ballot. So what that means is that it's going to take more time to go through our scanning equipment. And in our mail ballot state, we have several steps baked in to ensure integrity and accuracy throughout the process. So what that means is that all of these QC steps throughout the process means that it just takes a little bit of time to process. But again, going back to the beginning, we are fortunate that we can begin processing activities well before election night. But if we do get a heavy haul of ballots on election night or election day, that means we will be processing for several days, and that is normal, and it does not mean anything's wrong. It means that we are going through our steps with a high attention to detail and diligence. And when I say we, it is our hundreds of election judges and workers who help us to execute the election. Here is our current schedule. We will do, again, our first posting at 7:00 p.m. Our second posting will be at 8:30 p.m., then 11 p.m., and then 1 a.m. on Wednesday morning, which is really, I think for most people, election night. And then end of day on Wednesday and Thursday, and if we need to go into Friday, we will. And the reason that we do the schedule this way, just for transparency, is because the fewer postings that we do, the more results we are able to provide in those postings. So practically what this means is that to pull resources away from scanning to do a download of a report to then be posted to our separate election night results website, it just takes away from scanning activities to pause and do this report. So that's why we have it built the way that we do. And we just want everyone to know that all times are approximate, and we will keep everyone updated if the schedule changes on our social media accounts, and it's actually our Twitter account. Okay, so how many ballots left to count? This is a question that we get asked more than any other on election night. So we built this self-service kind of process and information so the public can find out for themselves. Again, if we were to take resources away to consistently provide this answer every time someone asked, it would take away resources from other processing activities. So that's why we built this so the public can kind of do it for themselves. So we do have a ballot returns page, and the link is on this slide. And so this website automatically updates every day at 7 a.m. But on election day, we will push more frequent updates as ballots are received back to our office. So we will continue to upload this or update this website on Wednesday and Thursday to keep current with how many, to show the public how many ballots that we have in house. And so what that means is that the public can look at our election night results website, and they can look at this website and they can compare the difference. So just to provide a couple of pieces of context, we are reliant on the Secretary of State data pushes, which can vary. Returns do include every ballot received. So what this means, as we just went over, received does not always mean accepted. And so this website is always going to be higher than what we ultimately count and scan. And that is because not all voters cure their ballot, for example. So that's why there is going to be obviously a higher number on this returns page. But this is really the best resource that I would say you all will have on election night to see what we have left to count. And again, it is a snapshot in time. So, you know, on election night, this number for Tuesday is going to say one thing. And then as our bipartisan career teams bring more ballots back in-house at 7:30, 8 p.m., this will get updated once we've received those ballots to our ballot processing center. Okay. The 8th and the 9th day after the election. So, I just realized this is an incorrect date. Sorry about that. But the 8th day after the election is the point in time where military and overseas voters must have their ballot returned to our office. And it is that cure deadline as well. So it does not mean that anything wrong or nefarious is happening. It just means that we're complying with laws around military and overseas voters. Again, they have until 8 days after the election. And then again, anybody that needs to cure their ballot has until 8 days after the election. We do, if you do yourself or know anybody that needs to cure their ballot, we will mail letters, and in those letters include very easy instructions for how to cure their ballot. There is a new platform called Text to Cure, and voters can use that to cure their ballot envelope. And apologies about these dates. So it's 8 days after the election, and then we'll do our final upload on 9th day. Okay, so there are 2 categories of buckets that will be counted after the 8-day deadline. There's the ballots that will definitely be counted and the ballots that will be potentially counted. The number will always end up somewhere in the middle. Okay, so ballots that will definitely be counted. We do a lot in Boulder County to preserve voter anonymity. It is our constitutional obligation to ensure privacy. So to achieve that outcome, we do hold ballots back, but move them forward to be counted on before 8th day and on 8th day. So how do we achieve anonymity? So one of the things that we do here in Boulder County is we reserve 3 ballots per precinct district style to help preserve anonymity for anybody that might potentially cure or mail their military and overseas ballots back within that 8th day window. So for this election, there are up to 672 reserve ballots this election. Voter information protection ballots are ballots that come from voters who live in places where there is a unique district style within a precinct. So the impact of that is that there are so few voters that actually might vote in that area or that style that we actually combine them with other voters who are in similar scenarios to preserve their anonymity. So looking at it this election, there are approximately 130 this election that are in that kind of scenario. And so we are holding their ballots back. So they won't be in the 7 p.m. upload on election night, but they will absolutely count and be in that 9th day upload. And then manual process ballots, these are ballots that come in during the last 24 hours. And there's usually some sort of, issue with them related to being damaged. And so what that means is they can't go through our mail sorter. They need to go through a more manual process. Most often this is because they might be dirty or stained, or that, given the weather scenario, they might have been impacted and the envelope might be damaged from the weather. It might be soaked or something like that. We will absolutely count those ballots, but what it means is that we, have to temporarily hold them because they can't go through our mail sorter. So there's around usually 500 of these ballots per election cycle. But to be really clear, we have, 3 ballots that we hold back per precinct district style. We have some styles of ballots that are, or ballot styles that are so unique that we want to combine them with other scenarios like that to protect their anonymity. And then the damaged ballots that come in will absolutely count. So these are ballots that are absolutely counted. We just hold them back for a short period of time, but they're counted for on that 9th day upload. And it is to preserve anonymity, to make sure that if any voter, that there's enough in each precinct to really blend and protect people's anonymity. So potentially counted ballots, we went through this a little bit earlier, but there are always outstanding and military overseas voter ballots. So we are required by law to provide them with that 8-day deadline so they can return their ballot back to our office within that 8-day deadline. This is a very low number, I would say, but we still will receive those ballots after election night. Any ballot that needs to be cured, the largest category here is signature discrepancy. And then if a ballot is returned to another county clerk's office. So in the state of Colorado, voters may return their ballot to any 24-hour ballot drop box in the state. And if a Boulder County voter returns their ballot to a Weld County drop box, for example, Weld County will ensure that that ballot is returned to Boulder County for processing. So those ballots will absolutely be counted. And then provisional ballots, this is something that we don't have a lot of really ever, since we now have same-day voter registration and replacement ballot process, so we have very, very few provisional ballots, and I would actually say it's usually less than 5. But these are the ballots, all these ballots are ballots that will potentially be counted. Okay, so recounts. We have some recent experience with recounts in Boulder County. We actually conducted 2 recounts earlier this summer. And a recount scenario will exist if there is a vote difference of less than 0.5% of the highest vote cast in that election contest. In terms of the process, so as I mentioned earlier, we have a bipartisan canvass board who actually certifies the original vote count. And that date right now is set for the end of November. And then what happens is after that recount, if that vote difference is less than 0.5% of the highest vote cast in that election, an automatic recount is triggered. And so that again happens after certification. So after certification, we will conduct the recount, and then the canvass board will reconvene to recertify the particular contest that we did a recount for. If a recount is not required, not automatically triggered, interested parties may submit a notarized request to the Secretary of State's office or our office, and that recount would be at the expense of the interested party making the request. So this is just an example to kind of do that math. Again, it's less than 0.5% of the highest vote total. So the difference here in this scenario, you can, if you do the math, is 31. The winning candidate vote total is 5,065. And no automatic recount is required because the vote difference was 0.6. And in a multiple candidate race, the same math does apply. I won't go through this scenario because it's the same kind of logic, but just to demonstrate that it is the same process, and it's just like in this scenario, it's the top 5. So it's this same process. It's just to figure out who would be that that final candidate for this contest. So if you've come on a ballot processing tour this week, you will have heard us say that we do not call an election for a particular candidate or issue ever. We do provide snapshots of time with election night results of what has been received and processed in our ballot processing center. We know that the press does like to call contests. That does not reflect any Boulder County process. We are still processing ballots through 8th day and doing an upload on 9th day. Once the canvass board meets to certify the election is when we consider election results certified and final. Our risk limiting audit, this is something that we are very proud of in Colorado. I'm sure most of you have heard about this. It is an audit that validates election outcomes. So in Colorado, we do have a paper ballot, which is great because one of the things that it allows us to do is after Election Day, we will have bipartisan teams actually pull physical ballots that voters voted for this election and compare it to the way that our scanning equipment interpreted that ballot at the time of scanning. So as ballots are getting scanned through our scanning equipment, it creates a cast vote record, which is a representation of how the scanning equipment interpreted that ballot and read that ballot at the time of scanning. So we will have bipartisan teams actually compare that to the actual paper ballot. This is considered a gold standard audit, and it's great to see so many other states across the country start to adopt risk limiting audits. So in a nutshell, you'll see on this slide that during ballot scanning, there is an imprint that is kind of stamped on that ballot. Please note that this is put on the ballot at the time of scanning. It is only to help us do the risk limiting audit later. And please note that this is obviously not connected to any type of voter. It's just a snapshot of time and a way to uniquely identify that ballot. From there, we securely store the ballot. And as I mentioned, that cast vote record is recorded. We do upload our cast vote record to the Secretary of State's office. And then the Secretary of State's office uses a risk limiting audit software to randomly select ballots to audit. We have bipartisan teams go and pull those ballots and compare the votes on the ballots to the votes recorded on that cast vote record. And we upload that information to the Secretary of State's office. This is just a high-level timeline. You are more than welcome to join us. We hope that you do join us when we do start conducting the risk limiting audit, which will be on Saturday, November 19th. But I think this is a great tool that we have to really demonstrate to the public why our election outcomes can be trusted and how we verify those election outcomes. So this is, again, a great tool that we have, and we really hope that you will join us as we do our risk limiting audit. It's a really great thing to see our bipartisan teams reviewing those ballots and comparing it to those cast vote records. It does provide that level of confidence to the public. Watchers are eligible electors who've been appointed by a candidate, political party, or issue committee to witness and verify the conduct of an election. We hope that you all have, I know we've seen some watchers already in the elections process, which is great. We really appreciate watchers being there because they can help go back to their communities or their friends and family and share what they learned. I personally very much value their participation in the process, and I'm glad when we see watchers there. So please let watchers know that we want them to be there. And what they need to do is pretty simple. They just come to our ballot processing center. They come to our main office to be credentialed, and they show our team a couple of different pieces of paperwork, and then the watcher will be directed to whatever part of the process they would like to watch. In Boulder County, we do hire watcher hosts to assist those watchers with what they're watching. So a lot of times we will have watchers kind of say, what am I looking at here? I'm just kind of here for the first time. I want to see what I'm looking at. And we want to be able to provide real-time information to those watchers. So we will have a watcher host available to help them get those real-time answers quickly. So that's how the process works. Please send watchers. We like having them on site. And again, we have watcher hosts to help answer any questions that they have. So that's all we have for you. If you have any questions, we're happy to answer them. And just want to encourage everyone to vote early because we do have a lot of steps in the mail ballot processing process. So by voting early, it helps our team process ballots over a longer period of time. So with that being said, we'll open it up to any questions. And Mercala, if you want to add anything, please do.
I just dropped it in the Q&A, just that we have November 20th to 22nd. Molly, if you want to just talk briefly, like what would trigger a round 2 risk limiting audit. There's usually one round, but if you want to just talk about that, we have those days reserved too. And that's why we're starting so early on that Saturday.
Yeah, so the risk limiting audit is a sorry, I'm getting a urgent message. Mercala, would you mind taking that question really quickly? I've got a urgent message coming through.
Okay, sure.
Thank you.
Just to basically go over it, because it is a statewide audit, if there is, there can be, typically when we have gone to round 2, it's that there is an error in another county, and that, as far as my understanding, has always been a human error, as in terms of somebody inputting the wrong data into the tool, which then leads us all to basically a round 2 of the audit. So, and then they then reassign an additional batch of ballots to pool to, again, you need to enter the precise votes into the audit tool. And so those days, just so people are aware, we will start on the 19th, but we also are on standby because it is a statewide audit and everyone needs to pass and we're all in it together. So that's sort of how that process works. So there are additional days potentially. So if you hear like, oh, they're doing another round, that is why typically. And the Secretary of State's office is the best one to answer, which county, if there was any issue and usually what that determination of that issue was, whether, if anyone has any questions, you can go ahead and drop it in the chat feature here. We'll give it another minute or two. All right, well, I don't see any questions. So again, we have tours. If you have not been on our tour, we'd love to have you, press candidates, parties, cities, anyone, citizens, please share it out. I'll probably do a round of social media on the tours again today. And in particular, we're trying to encourage students, both our local college students and interested high school students to participate. We have a couple of tours designated for students. We have tours both this Saturday afternoon and again on Monday. And we did add, this year we try to double the amount of tour slots. So we so Saturday afternoon we have some tours, and then Monday around lunchtime, as well as Monday after work. So the tours take about 30, it's usually 30-40 minutes is usually the time period, depending on how many questions from the group and how big it is. But yeah, we'd love to spread the word as much as possible to get more people in the door to see the process firsthand. So we'd love to have you if you haven't been there, and please share that that opportunity. So I will be uploading this presentation to YouTube if you missed part of it, and that I'll send that out to you. And of course, we do have a YouTube channel. It's Boulder County Clerk, and I'll go ahead and include that link. No other questions? Okay, well, thank you, everyone, and we'll talk soon.
Thank you, everyone.